Go. So if you don't know me by now, my name's Dr. Jody Dinnerman. I'm the founder and creator of All Things Soup School. And there's nothing I love more than interviewing people who are really brilliant at what they do and really good at communicating so that people like me aren't like, huh? Can you break that down a little bit? And when it comes to running a practice without staff, which is what we do in the staffless practice community, or what we strive to do, or a lot of us are also interested in, we have staff and we just want to automate their roles a bit more so that we can truly push their talent forward. One of the things that comes up over and over and over again is, how do I take notes? How do I take notes and make sure that at the end of my day, when I'm done seeing clients, some people use the word patient, some people use the word clients. How do I make sure that I can rest my head on the pillow and know that I did my due diligence as a doctor, as a therapist, or whatever it is? So Dr. Gregg obviously works with chiropractic and the world of soap notes in all things compliance with chiropractors. Please recognize that we have practitioners of all sorts that are going to be listening to this call, whether it's today or they're going to be listening in aftermath on YouTube. With that being said, before I introduce Dr. Gregg, if you are watching this on YouTube, please hit the bell because I know you have nothing better to do than to get alerts when I go live. So go ahead and hit the bell and make sure that you follow me. And if you want to learn more about staffless practice and what we're up to with staffless practice, please go to stafflesspracticetraining.com to get a free hour-long training with just really good stuff right at your fingertips. So with that being said, when I asked the world of practitioners who were running things without staff, what do you want to learn more about? The number one answer is always, how do I take notes and be in compliance without staff? So when I fielded the chiropractic world and said, who's the number one person with note taking? Over and over, I got Dr. Gregg's name and I reached out to him. And not only is he so familiar to me, like I feel like I could talk to him all day long, but he's cool. He's a cool person. He's been around the block. He's in practice. He loves what he does. He loves chiropractors. He loves helping people. So who better than to be on the other side of the screen and being in our world for the next hour? So Dr. Gregg from Bulletproof Chiro, with that being said, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I'm going to step away for a moment and let you take over. Hi and welcome.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, good morning. It's morning where I am, but thank you for inviting me. It's really a pleasure. And Dr. Jody and I never met before. We met for the first time virtually, I think maybe a month or so ago. And it's been fascinating. It really has been. I love what you're doing. So a little background on me. So I've been a chiropractor for 34 years, which simply cannot be possible. I just don't understand how that happened. But somehow when I look at my diploma, the numbers seem to add up, but it just doesn't seem right. I'm a second generation chiropractor. My father was a chiropractor for more than 60 years. You can imagine that, 60 years. That's crazy. Anyway, I still practice part-time. I see patients just a few mornings a week. I've been doing that for quite a while. I also, for up until March of 2020, I was traveling between 85 and 100,000 miles a year, teaching chiropractors all over the country how to document. Since COVID, I was able to fortunately shift to more of an online thing. So I do 2 online webinars a month now, but I still do some live things. I do a lot of things for Parker University. I'm doing a webinar later today for NCMIC. I do a bunch of different things like that. I also consult with chiropractors and attorneys and state boards and insurance companies. So I've reviewed a lot of records. I give opinions on malpractice cases, both for and against chiropractors. I actually prefer defending chiropractors on stuff, but every now and then something comes up, I'm like, what? So anyway, there's a lot of stuff like that. So I love chiropractic. I always tell doctors that what I talk about is not an insurance thing. It's a doctor thing. We have to document. We just have to, and we have to do it well. And I'll be honest with you, we're so bad at it. It's not just you. You are not alone. You are in a very large club. Most chiropractors are just awful at it. And I breaks my heart when I hear about doctors who are spending an extra 3 hours a day at the office doing their notes or taking stuff home with them. I'm like, what?
So
Why are you doing that?
can we get into that? I warned Dr. Gregg that I interrupt a lot. It's just how
It's
my brain
okay.
processes. Let's go there. How long should it be taking us to take notes? And what should we be doing? Like, what are give us like the ABC 1, 2, 3 of note taking. What's absolutely crucial that we get down, and how long should it take?
Okay, so there's two different kinds of visits to consider. One visit would be like the initial visit, the exam visit, and that's going to take a little bit longer. The other visits, we'll call those the subsequent visits. You know, you're just a daily visit, you're seeing the patient, what do you document? So on the first visit, you know, you've got to do a history, and there are certain requirements for that, and you've got to kind of start them off right. And I always tell doctors that if you want, in my seminars and webinars, I spend 6 hours the whole first day, 6 hours talking about visit number one, because that one visit is so critical. Because if you do that one visit properly, every visit after that is going to be easy. And what I mean by easy is after that first visit, it takes me an average of, are you ready? Between 7 and 10 seconds to document for that visit.
I love that.
If you're spending a minute on every visit, and I don't mean the whole visit, I just mean the documentation part. If you're spending, I see these ads for these different things, you know, oh, you can do a soap note in 5 minutes. Like, what are you, high? There's no way I'm going to spend that kind of, look, I don't want to do this any more than you do. I remember for years thinking to myself, could you just leave me the hell alone and I can see my patients and everything is fine? And why do you need to see my documentation in the first place? And I come from a generation where nobody cared back in those days. Nobody ever looked at our documentation. So it was easy to scribble a bunch of crap on a card because nobody ever looked at it. Well, then it changed, and we didn't get the rules. So it's been a nightmare. So the first visit, you've got to spend a little bit more time. And it takes me usually between 4 and 6 minutes to document the first visit. But I'm really efficient with that. I make sure that my paperwork matches the software that I use so I can really quickly and easily enter that information. But after that visit, that's when there's only a few things that we've got to document on every visit. But there are certain requirements, and that's the problem I run into with doctors. They have no idea what these different requirements are. And it's not a Medicare thing. And some doctors ask me, well, Greg, how do I document for Medicare? How do I document for PI? There's no such thing. There's no such thing as documenting for PI and documenting for Medicare and documenting for Blue Cross. It's just documentation because everyone wants the same thing, which makes our lives easier, believe it or not, because now we need to find one way to do this and everybody's happy.
So we get the question a lot. Well, if I don't take insurance and I'm not a participating provider with Medicare, can I just take the notes that make sense to my brain? And how would you, I know I'm going off topic a little bit, but as I warned Gregg, I'm guilty of jumping into the brain of a staffless practitioner and what you guys would want to know. So what are we required to take notes on at every visit, independent of, like you said, that the first visit is really where we set it up so that we can kind of copy paste, and then add a few things here and there. What are those things that we're setting up? What do we want to be thinking about? And then the second part of the question, because I can, right, is how much of it is really useful for our practical application? Like when I see a person for the 4th time or the 5th time, how much of what I'm documenting the first 4 times that I see them is applicable to, like, real quick, can I see it? And then, yes, that's actually what I did the last few times. So talk to us a little bit about the everyday use for our satisfaction as staffless practitioners, but also what do we have to have in those notes?
Okay, so let me start by saying that who creates these rules that I'm talking about? Now, you're not going to like this, but Medicare creates the rules, even if it's not a Medicare patient. Medicare, they're the feds. They create the rules for everything, and everyone follows them. Your state board follows Medicare, believe it or not. It's just that hardly anybody ever goes to the state board website to look at the actual statutes, but they're following the Medicare rules. Personal injury follows Medicare. Workers' comp follows Medicare. Blue Cross follows Medicare. Every audit that I've done, when the worst cases I've been involved with trying to help chiropractors out of a jam with their state boards, there were cash practices. And it was that kind of an attitude, well, I'm a cash practice and I don't have to know that there are requirements. Your board actually requires this stuff. So here's what Medicare wants from us. Two things. You ready? Two things. The first thing is they want us to assess pain on every visit. Assess pain on every. Now, whenever I say that, some chiropractors roll their eyes at me. I don't want to talk about pain. I understand. I get it. But we have to in a certain way. And there's two ways to assess pain. The second thing they want from us is functional. They want us to assess function. Now that only needs to be done every 30 days or sooner, right? And this is the key. When somebody asks me, what do they actually mean by medical necessity? Because we've seen that phrase for years now, and for a long time nobody knew what it meant. I found out what it meant, and what they're talking about is measurable. Things have to be measurable. When we're documenting, this is one of the things for Medicare. It has to be measurable. Measurable is the key. So measurable and functional, those two things. So pain assessment every visit for each condition, functional outcome assessment every 30 days or sooner. I know some of you are gagging right now, and that's okay. What is a functional outcome assessment? It's one of those functional outcome questionnaires, but not oswestry, not neck disability. I'm telling doctors, don't use those. And the reason is they're too long. They're too complicated. They're too aggravating. Your patients hate them. They get mad at you if you're having them do that. And they're closing their eyes after question number 4, and you're getting really weird answers from it. So there's easier and faster ones to do that takes the patient maybe less than a minute to fill out. So we've got to be efficient with our time, with the patient's time and all that. But those numbers are critically important, because one of the things that's required from us for Medicare is, you ready for this? On every visit, we've got to document how each condition changed since the previous visit. And that is a problem. I was involved in a Medicare audit with a chiropractor a couple of years ago, and that's what the judge kept saying. And that's why this guy, it was going to cost him about $66,000. And it was all because he didn't show change since the previous visit on that. So there's certain, and it's so easy to do. But the key is you've got to start using some numbers. Numbers is going to make our lives so much easier. And if you're wondering, like, well, how do I tell the story? I've heard this for years. With somebody many years ago taught chiropractors, in your notes, you've got to tell the story. And I'm like, what story? What story do I need to tell? There's only certain things. All you need to worry about in that storytelling are, what are the numbers doing? So the only thing that I track on every visit is the intensity of the pain and the frequency of the pain, because sometimes the intensity may not change, but the frequency might. So
What
as
if
long
there's
as,
no pain?
okay, so that's another thing. So there's a couple of kinds of patients.
Like, what if you're a prenatal chiropractor or a pediatric chiropractor and you just a newborn?
Right. So let's talk about two different kinds of patients, also from Medicare. There's the active patient and the maintenance patient, right? So the active patient has complaints, they have pain, they have a thing, and we have a whole treatment plan set up, and that's fine. But the other type, the maintenance patient, these are patients of ours that come in every week, every month, every whatever, and they say, I feel great, I just like to get adjusted once or whatever. Or they say, no, I feel good, just a little stiff here and there, but nothing. So there's no real metric involved for that. So for those patients, all I really document for the subjective complaint would be, patient is here for a maintenance visit, they're asymptomatic. If it was a child or an infant that I'm treating, I would say that, but then I would make a note that the mother noted that they are crying more frequently, or they're not pooping in their diaper as much as they were, or something. I'll do that. But then you're going to note in the rest of your notes, it's going to be identical to everything else.
Let me ask you this. So wait, I have to pin myself. Hold on. Pin. There we go. So what I know people are thinking right now is I don't have time to like get a glass of water when I'm in the office. I don't have time to go to the bathroom. How the hell am I going to have time to document all this stuff? What of what you're saying can we put, the way that my brain goes to it is I put it on a clipboard and I have slips that look something like this size paper that say, how are you doing today? Name, date, and grade this, grade this, grade this. Can we put something like that on a clipboard, have our practice members fill it out each time they come in, they drop it in a box, and then we send these to our VA? Or how can we do this automated so that we can stay in flow in our practice?
Well, I'm interested in whatever makes you more efficient. So in fact, people think that I'm all into technology. And I'm like, well, I mean, I am, but I'm only interested if technology can make my life more efficient. Because there's a lot of times where technology does not make me more efficient, and I don't want to hear about it. But when it can make me more efficient, that's when I start to focus in on it. So can you do that? You can. However, you've got to make sure that your patient is consistent with those initial complaints. Because I've reviewed records before. I was helping a chiropractor with a Blue Cross audit in the Midwest. And his patient would come in and check themselves into a computer in the waiting room, and they would put their symptoms in. Well, the first visit, they were talking about neck pain and upper back, middle back, left elbow, right shoulder. And then on the next visit, it asked them what their complaints are, and they said left elbow. And it did not follow through, did not carry through. So they got in all kinds of trouble with the insurer and end up having to pay some money back. So as long as you could do it so that it's the same symptoms, and even if maybe today one of those symptoms is a 0, that's okay, that's fine. But you need to be able to be consistent with that and track that. Again, if it's a maintenance patient or somebody that really doesn't have pain, or they, maybe they're a little stiff or something, I don't even worry about that. I just say, hey, lay down, right? But I'm going to document the subluxations or restrictions or whatever word you want to use. That's required if you're going to be adjusting somebody. I'll document that I did the adjustment, and if there's anything else that I did. So a maintenance patient, that'll take me between 1 and 2 seconds to document. So the active patient, so if you want to do that on a card like that, to give it to a VA, things like that, you can, but make sure that you're remaining. So maybe on the first visit, take those symptoms, have like a laminated card for the patient. I'm just spitballing right now. You could probably cover something better.
I like spitballs. Keep going.
Yeah, have something like that, and then on the next visit, and then after you document that, wipe it clean, give it to them on the next visit. They put their new numbers in there, but it's the same symptoms. So that might be something that you can do.
What's the best setup you've ever seen? Like when you like, I'm really into like visuals. Like, give me a visual, Dr. Gregg. What does it look like? Your patients are coming in, you're seeing one person every few minutes, if that's the way that you practice. What's it look like when we're taking notes in the right way? What happens?
Okay, so I'll just tell you how I do it. So patient comes into me. So I may block off about 5 minutes or less. I always crack up when some chiropractors get really mad at me when when I tell them that when I practiced full time back in the day, I was seeing about 100 patients a day or so, and people like, oh my gosh, that's terrible quality. I'm like, well, talk to my patients about it. See what they have to say about it. So how can I spend 5 minutes or less with the patient? It only takes a minute and a half to make an adjustment, to do an adjustment on somebody. So from my office, I have my own software that I use, and I'll ask the patient, let's say in the second visit, I'll say, hey, good to see you. How are you today? I'm like, and I will control the discussion. I'll say, let's get right into it. And I'll say, let's see, your neck pain the other day was a 6 out of 10. Any change? And they go,
and what are you, Gregg, what are you looking at to know that?
I'm looking at my monitor. I'm using software.
Oh, and we're going to hear about that for sure.
I can see it. I can see what I had the last time. It comes up, and then I can say, did it change? And then I change the intensity, the frequency, and anything else. And for most subsequent visits, all I do is change the numbers, and then unless something else changes, then I would change it. But otherwise, I'm on to the next thing, and then they lay down, I do whatever. Just so that you have a little background on me, for about 10 years, I actually traveled for a billionaire patient. I had a patient who was a billionaire, and he lived on the East Coast. And he used to travel to come to Phoenix to see me sometimes. And then he asked if I would travel to him. So I had portable adjusting tables in 4 locations around the country. And I would get a call from his assistant. And the usual location I would go would be Midtown Manhattan. So I was in Manhattan about twice a month for 10 years. And I would literally get to his penthouse apartment in Midtown, and the concierge would bring me my table. I'd bring it upstairs to the penthouse apartment. I'd open up the table. He would lay down. I would say, "How you doing?" "Good." He would lay down. It took me longer to open up the table and close it back up than it was for me to actually adjust him. And then I left, and that was the end of it. So and I still documented for that when I would get home. I didn't bring a computer with me to do that. But this is so easily done if we do it the right way, but you have to understand what all these rules are. So I use these numbers when there's a number to track the patient, see if they're improving or not. That's one of the big things that I find as a problem. A lot of records that I review is doctors are not showing improvement, which is tragic to me because chiropractors get such phenomenal outcomes. We're just not showing it. And that's the key. We've got to be able to show that improvement. And that's one of those big requirements to actually show it.
Sorry, I muted myself. I'm trying, it's tricky because I got all these screens in front of me and people asking me questions, like all these things are going on. So, by the way, if you're a soup student, you come into the Zoom room for amazing talks like this. If you are not yet a soup student, this talk is only available to you after the fact, or you can watch it live in the Facebook group and ask comments in the comment thread. But the active Zoom is only available to soup students. So what would you say to the practitioner who has 50 million balls up in the air at once, doesn't have time for the drink of the water or the breakfast before she starts practicing, and wants to get this cleaned up? Where does she start? What are their first what are the first steps that they should take to get on the path of doing notes correctly?
So the first thing I think would be paperwork. The new patient paperwork that the patient fills out, don't have them do that in the office. They hate that. And you're getting bad information. Send it to them ahead of time if you're doing this on bed. So we actually will email the paperwork to the patient, or we'll put it on a website. And when they call in to make an appointment, well, I use a virtual assistant and I give them a script. And I tell them, tell the new patient when they call, ask them if they have internet access. If they do, go to this website, download the paperwork, fill it out ahead of time. They can either bring it in already completed, or they can fill it out on their computer, whatever works for them. Make sure they do that, because that's going to make your time in your office much more efficient. The worst thing is when a patient doesn't do that. They don't listen to you. They go, "Oh, my printer broke, I ran out of paper." So we tell them up front, if you're not able to do this ahead of time, no problem. Come to your appointment 45 minutes earlier. That is our gentle way of warning them that you're going to do this and you're not going to screw up my time or my other patients' time that already had appointments. You've got to make sure, though, that if you're doing it this way, that whatever paperwork you're using, you really need it to match whatever software you're using, if you're using software, as closely as possible, because that's going to make it easier and faster to enter into whatever program you're using. Because if it doesn't match, then you're going to be all over the place. It's going to take too much time. And then after that, once all that information is entered, after that, that's when this should be able to go really quick and really easily. Just clicking on the changes. Because let's be honest, when we're seeing an active patient who has pain or whatever complaint and everything, not everything changes every visit, right? Some, like the subluxations, the restrictions, they might stay the same for a while. So I'm not going to change those every visit. Or maybe if there's a trigger point, that doesn't change every visit. So a lot of stuff is going to be just the same, but the things that do change, the variables, like I told you earlier that we're required to document how each condition is changing since the prior visit. Well, the easiest and most efficient way to do that is with the use of those numbers. because now we can say, oh, look, the number went from a 6 to a 5. That showed improvement with that. So for me, that's part of the assessment that's required in the assessment. And I don't even do it because it's automatic for me because I use technology to calculate and document for me for that kind of stuff.
I love it. Let me just tell you guys that my blood sugar dropped like 3 minutes ago. So I'm eating a peanut butter sandwich so that I don't pass out on my keyboard. Any other thoughts or quick tips for the staffless entrepreneurial wellness practitioner? Anything else that you want us to be thinking about when it comes to dotting our I's, literally dotting our I's and crossing our T's with all things note-taking and compliance?
Okay, so here's a question that comes up a lot from patients who see, or doctors who see Medicare patients. They say, when do I stop? So here's I just had a patient that I saw yesterday that this is what happened. So as long as a Medicare patient has a problem, they have a complaint, and you do your functional outcome questionnaire, and you have a set of goals and whatever, and you start, that's cool. I tell them, and I tell these patients up front, Medicare is fine to pay for that, for their portion of that. But once you get to the point where, you're all good or you're plateaued or whatever, that's the point where I can no longer bill Medicare. So I have this one patient who came in sometime last year, and he gets this chronic lower back pain, but it's recurrent. So he'll be fine for a while, then it hurts again. So he came in a few times, and then that was it. And then he comes back in a couple months later, see him a few times, and then that was it. That's kind of the way he rolled. I billed Medicare for that. The last time I saw him about a month or so ago, he said, I feel really good when I get adjusted. And even if I didn't have any pain, I mean, is it beneficial for me to come in, even if I don't have pain, to do that? And I actually told him about a study called the Nordic Maintenance Study that was published just a couple of years ago about maintenance care for people with chronic lower back pain or recurrent lower back pain, that when we can see them when they're asymptomatic at certain periods of time, it appears to reduce the number of incidences and the severity of the incidences. So I told him, we could certainly do that, but I just need to tell you up front, Medicare, I can't bill Medicare for that. You got to pay for that. Now, I could charge you the Medicare allowable rate, but you got to pay out of pocket. And he says, oh, okay. So how often would I said, I don't know, I mean, you could do it every week, every 2 weeks, every month, whatever you wanted to go. So if I came in every couple of weeks, twice a month, that would cost me about this much. I said, yeah. And he goes, okay. So he came in yesterday as part of this plan, and I haven't filled out an ABN for Medicare, and he pays cash. And I told him, if at some point there's a new episode and he has a complaint, boom, we switch back to Medicare and we do that. So you just have to understand, it's so easy to do that though. I had a patient for years, his name was Chuck. Chuck came in every Wednesday for 20 years. And he was an older guy. And I told him years ago, look, I can't bill Medicare for this, your maintenance. And he goes, okay, I'll just pay for it. I said, but if something happens, then we ship.
What Gregg is talking about right now is such a crucial point, and it's a point that I drive home over and over and over again with our students. And that's that you set the barometer, you set the tone in your office, you set this is what's expected. Of course, this is the way that it goes. And here's the thing, however you want to run your practice within the statute of limitations and what you're allowed to do, that's how you run your practice. You don't field your patients to get permission to do this and to do that. No, you do what you need to do what you need to do, right? Especially if you're doing it without staff. And just like Dr. Gregg's saying, hey buddy, this is how we do it here. Here's what you need to fill out. Or hey buddy, this is how we do it here. It's going to be $50 today. Thank you very much. Assume that they're okay with it. unless
Right.
they tell you otherwise. Assume that the way that you do it is the way that they're okay with, because they're in your office. And you know what, you guys, to be totally honest with you, if they're not okay with it, there's a dude down the street doing it differently. See ya, next, right? Not that you want to turn people, I'm not telling you to be a you know what to your practice members, but you've got to practice the way that you got to practice. And you've got to dot the I's that are waiting there for you to dot. You've got to cross the T's that are waiting for your crossing, right? So there's only so much that we can yield and bend to make people happy with our care. And I'm going to tell you right now, you know, this is just a trite example. Yesterday, I was at Orange Theory Fitness because I'm a goofball, right? And on my rest days from CrossFit, I go to Orange Theory Fitness. Who doesn't do that? So I'm on the treadmill and they play like 80s music because they want people like me to be happy in there. And I'm running on the treadmill and I'm singing to AC/DC. And the guy next to me can totally hear me singing, but that's who I am. I want to sing to AC/DC while I'm running on the treadmill. So I continue to sing. And I think to myself, 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't be singing right now. And I'd probably want to be singing. When I'm at 40, the wise age of 48, I don't care what the guy on the treadmill next to me thinks. Of course, I'm not being obnoxious. And my point is to bring this home. When I'm in my practice, that's my playground, right? I'm going to do it the way that it works for me so that I can get all the stuff done that I want to get done, with compliance, of course, being centered around all of it. You got to do it the way that you got to do it to do what you need to do, right? So
Exactly.
Nicole is asking, what do we do with our old stuff? So let's say from this point forward, we do what you're saying to do. What do we do with the from this point backward stuff?
Honestly, don't worry about it. Could you imagine having to go back X number of years to I would want to kill myself, I think, for that. I would say, don't worry about it. You just want to start as soon as you can moving forward with it. The only exception to that might be, and this is maybe like a personal injury case, but again, you can't be changing stuff after the fact with that. So yeah, you've got to be, so I would say, don't worry too much about going backwards in time. Just start forward. Even as someone like me that reviews a ton of records, if I see one day some awful travel card with a bunch of scribbled nonsense on it, and then the next visit is some really nice legible thing, I'm just going to say, okay, they learned something and they got some software. That's fine. I'm not going to freak out about that. I'm just looking at what was documented and so on.
So I have to ask the natural question, what are you going to freak out about? Like, what do you look at and you're like, oh my God, this is so bad.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so here, so I was reviewing a case yesterday, and and their doctor was using software, and I know I can identify most software programs now just by seeing it, and I'm looking at it, and this is a PI case, and every visit the doctor kept reiterating the symptoms: neck pain, upper back pain, middle back pain, lower back pain, whatever, but they didn't say anything else about it. So it looked like for every visit that they saw this patient, the patient did not improve at all. So I'm like, why do you think that's okay? And then, the other thing that I look at on these cases, you've got to show every 30 days or sooner that functional measurable improvement. And if you're not, we cut you off at 30 days, and good luck getting past that. And I always tell these doctors, want to know how to get past me? I'll tell you exactly how to get past me with that. Just do this. It takes a minute to do that. Do that, move on with your life. And now, as far as I remember when I was young in practice, more than a couple of years ago, I remember the whole report of findings thing. And it was so frustrating because we all wanted to know, hey, what's your report of findings? What's the magic words, this magic sentence that you could use for a patient that gets them to agree to a care plan? And we would see each other at conventions and seminars, and we'd all ask each other this. And there was no magic bullet. And every report of findings I learned back in those days felt like such a sales pitch that just made me nauseous. Because I'm like, why do I need to do a sales pitch? This is great stuff. I'm going to help you. It's going to be awesome. Why do I need to sell you on that? And I finally realized that when I can show them where they are measurably, and then we could talk about what normal is, and then I can ask them, what do you want to do? And they say, well, can you get me to that number? And I'll say, pretty sure I can. How about we give it a shot? And then we reassess after a period of time and see if we're going in the right direction or not. I mean, that was so liberating for me. I didn't have to sell. I didn't have to, do a whole dog and pony show with them. I just based it on that. It was just beautiful. I love that.
Brilliant. I love it. Ask them what they want and then show them how to get it. Right?
Right.
That's all.
Exactly.
So
Can I tell you one brief story?
yeah.
I had a guy walk into my office, I don't know, several months ago, walks in with a cane, and he says to me, I got back pain. So he didn't have an appointment, just walked in. I have back pain. Can you help me? I said, well, I'd have to check you out, but probably. And he says, I have Medicare. I said, okay, let me explain Medicare. I said, I have to do an exam on you. You're a new patient. I have to do an exam on you. Medicare won't pay for it. He said, well, what does your exam cost? I said, my exam is $120. He said, I can't afford that. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, if you want, I still have to charge you the $120, but even if you pay it $10 a visit to pay that $120 off, that's okay, because I'm not discounting it, that's okay. And he said, I can't afford that either. It was at that moment that I knew what he was looking for. He just wanted me to, and I told him, I said, I'm sorry, I can't help you, which breaks my heart because I want to help everybody, right? I want to help, but I can't do it. So I said, you can try to find somebody else to do that, but that would be a big problem for them if they get caught with that. So I'm not going to risk my license or my practice to do that. And I felt bad, but I have to be in control.
We talk a lot in Soup School about blaming it on your systems. So like our system is, our office policy is, so my office policy is, X, Y, and Z. And you're in that weird moment where they're asking you for something that is crossing a boundary and it doesn't feel good. And you're like, you got 10 people waiting for an appointment and 5 people on the table and the dog's barking and the phone's ringing and they're saying, can I have this for free? And the easy go-to is, well, my office policy is blah, blah, blah. So you blame it on the policy, you blame it on the system.
It's Medicare's fault. That's right.
Medicare. It's always Medicare's fault. Delete. I didn't say that. So there were a couple. So what do we do with our old stuff? Where can we get access? Okay, so we're going to get there, Dr. Kim. Like, do we need to note? Nicole is asking, do we need to notate in compliance manual or other?
No, I don't get into compliance manuals and all that. That's more of a HIPAA kind of a thing, which
that's Robin Hale stuff.
I have my own attitudes about that. When HIPAA first came out a long time ago, we were getting inundated by different chiropractors selling compliance stuff. And it was all just a bunch of crap. It really was. It was a lot of crap that was unnecessary. You do need to have some kind of a compliance program with that, but don't stress about it. There's no need to do that. But what I'm talking about is your actual documentation. And the takeaway that I want you to get from this is it is so much easier than you think it is. You just have to figure out or learn from somebody who figured it out how to get there fast and efficiently. I do not want to hear ever again that any chiropractor took this crap home with them on the weekend and they had to miss their kid's soccer game because they were doing notes that makes me want to hurt people when I do that. I can literally, I finish up, I'm in my office, I'm done, boom, I'm out of there. See ya. Leave me alone, right? The next day I go in, I document well. I don't want to see a piece of paper or a computer screen twice. I go one time, let me finish it, I'm gone. That's it. You've got to understand though that, because I get this question a lot where doctors will ask me about, well, what about software? Let me caution you about software. Most software programs when I'm talking about these programs that do everything, right? You've got your documentation, your billing, your scheduling, and all that. So let me be clear about this. I would say all of them do fine with the billing, the scheduling, and the other stuff like that. That's what their focus is. Their focus is not on the documentation. That is an afterthought, right? And from a programming perspective, the programming for billing is a monster. It's just crazy amount of billing, scheduling, all that other stuff, a lot of programming. The documentation part, some of these programs are just putting stuff in there so that you just type stuff in or dictate stuff in there. And then you've got to understand what you need to type in or dictate. Other programs, you could get macros that other doctors have come up with. I'm like, well, that's okay, as long as whoever created those macros knows what they're doing. Because I review all these records and I can tell you spent a lot of money on somebody's macros, didn't you? Because this is crap. This is on the verge of fraud. It's like cheating off the stupid kid in school, right?
I don't think you're supposed to say that, Dr. Gregg. That has to break some kind of a rule of social.
If you're going to cheat off of somebody, make sure it's a smart kid, not the. I had a friend in chiropractic college, and the first day of class, this guy was talking about stuff that I'd never heard of. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. This guy's so smart. I'm not even close to this guy's level. Well, I didn't realize till later that he was just literally making stuff up. He didn't know anything. I was way, so I'm like, okay, I'm not talking to him anymore. Don't listen to him.
I'm not talking to him anymore. I was always the person that had to study twice as hard as everybody else in chiropractic school. Like, I'm not a book person at all. The irony, I know, I get it. I just created a school and wrote the book. Like, really? But you know what? That's what we do. We rise up because I'm a people person and I get people and I get what they're looking for. With that being said, give us your best commercial for Bulletproof Chiro. What do you want us to know? Just give it to us.
Okay, so this is uncomfortable for me because I created something and I don't like to sell necessarily. So what I did a number of years ago, I got so frustrated because I know so much about this particular subject. I've been teaching it for more than 20 years at the postgraduate level. I was using software of other people's that I'm like, this is just wrong, or this is just taking me too long, and I hate this, and it's making me too much anxiety. So I created my own. I decided to put my money where my mouth was, and I hired a programmer. And I told my programmer, hey, this is what I want to do. How do I communicate this to you? And my programmer said, programming is a language. And there's two things that we're looking for, numbers and logic. So as long as you could communicate to me in numbers or logic, I could do it. And I said, oh, all right. So it changed my focus to that. And then it worked out perfectly because of all these requirements using metrics anyway. So we created a program just for documentation, because that is by far the weak link for all these various programs out there and for so many chiropractors, the documentation part. So we created it with two things in mind. Number one, that you follow the rules and the regulations and requirements. Number two, because I still see patients and I know how we think and I know how we flow. This has to be fast. It has to be efficient, but it has to be bulletproof. And that was the key. So we did it. I had a dream one night, believe it or not, I had a dream one night that woke me up in the middle of the night. And I was dreaming about this software. And I woke up and I wrote it down because I knew I'd forget it. And then the next day I emailed my programmer and I asked her, I said, hey, is this doable? And she said, oh yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. She said, what? I said, nobody's doing that. And that would make our life so much easier. So I actually got a patent attorney and I applied for a patent on it, which it's the craziest thing. And it all came to me in a dream with that. I'm all about how do we be more efficient about this? Look, let's face it. You hate documentation. I hate documentation. Everybody hates it. It's a horrible subject. We have to do it though, and we have to do it really, really well. And we can, but you have to be careful because the biggest problem I run into, Doc, is that most doctors don't have any idea what these rules are, what the requirements are. So you get a demo from a software company and you see all the bells and whistles and pretty colors. And you're like, oh, I like that. But you don't realize that when I get a demo, I'm like, that's wrong. That's fraud. You can't do that. That's illegal. And that's when the problem is. So I just took it all information. I get information from others. Sometimes I see something else out there. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Or a doctor says, Greg, how about this? And I say, no. Or I say, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's add that to it. And we do that and boom, we could document so quickly and so efficiently, such little time and so little effort. And I use technology to literally do half of it for me. And that's what I did with Bulletproof.
I love it. I'm just looking at
That was a long elevator speech, wasn't it?
It was awesome. It was awesome. And you know why it was awesome is because you were speaking from your heart. And the interesting thing is that everything that I'm doing has come to me in dreams too. So, the first thing I teach my students in soup school is have a notebook by your bed with a pen.
Yeah.
And as soon as you wake up, Barbara Eaton talks about how the thought she has as soon as she opens her eyes, it's divinely inspired. And that could not be more true for me. And my mentor passed, she transitioned a few years ago. And when I was creating Soup School and writing the book Staffless, I would wake up and have just hung out with her in a dream. And she'd say, okay, now go write about this. Okay, now go write about that. And I was like the Snoopy character at the piano for like 6 months straight because I didn't want to miss anything that I just dreamt about. So I would come and I would type at the computer, and when it needs to happen, it happens. And
Yep.
The other thing about that, and I know that this is off track, but this is really important for you guys to hear. When it's right, it's right. Right. So you can't force creativity like that. And if you don't have dreams that are inspiring you to get creative, then this might not be the time to create. This might be the time to go do, right? The creative time comes. I promise you it comes for all of us. Most of the time, as long as we're in alignment with our anchors and rituals and our core values, which are all things that we teach in Soup School, you're going to have the dreams. You're going to have the, oh my God, I have to do that. I need a pen. Who has a pen? I need it now. So with all of that being said, in conclusion, what would you say to somebody who was on the fence? Let me just talk about Soup School for a minute because it really does rock. So we've created an online finishing school of sorts for staffless entrepreneurial wellness practitioners to automate their front desk experience so that they don't have to have staff, or if they do have staff who they love, they can truly push their staff's talent forward. And they do that by automating their client communication system, their marketing. We do that by teaching them how to market, teaching them how to brand. We do that by teaching them how to get their shediggles together before they go pound pavement. We do that by teaching them about compliance and teaching about how to talk about money, how to think about money, how to organize time, how to organize their daily to-do list. So and the other cool thing is that Dr. Gregg is actually going to be contributing some content for Soup School. So all of my students right now, you guys are getting it. He's going to give us some good stuff currently being recorded and perfected for the Staffless Entrepreneurial Wellness Practitioners. So with all of that being said, Dr. Gregg, what do you say to the person who's thinking about joining Soup School and really kind of teetering? Is this a good time to do this? What do you say to them?
So that's a great question. And I would say this. So after meeting you, Dr. Jody, about, I don't know, a few weeks ago or a month ago or so, you speak to my soul because I've been all about this efficiency thing and even practicing without staff for so many years now that I was cracked. I was telling my wife that I thought I was really organized and efficient until I started getting emails from you. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been missing all this stuff. It is so cool to see that. So I'm so excited because and I was thinking about this today that yes, this is exceptional if you want to be staffless, but even for those who have a staff. Most of the offices that I see with staff, they're used so inefficiently. I'm like, oh God, there's such a better way to do this. So I think this soup school is such a phenomenal idea, and you are just the person to do this. This is so divinely inspired. I'm telling you, I'm so excited about this because I'm like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I was telling you that I started this second office years ago that was closer to my wife's family. I was there for 8 hours a week. So I had one full-time office with full-time staff, and then I had one 8-hour per week office with no staff. At the end of the first year, I looked at my numbers. My 8-hour per week office was more profitable than my full-time office with staff. Not that the gross was higher, the gross was lower, but my net profit was high. And I'm like, okay, new plan. And I shifted everything. So the fact that you're able to teach everybody from because a lot of people have a problem like, wait, so what do I do next? And you give everybody a step by step by step. Okay, on this day, on this day, do this. On this day, do that. It's beautiful. I love that because that's what people need. I need to be force fed. I think, okay, wait, it's Tuesday. What am I supposed to do? Do this. All right, okay, I can do that. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. I think to add to that, first of all, thank you. That was awesome. And I'm like the puppy right now, sitting on your lap, just so excited at everything that you're saying. And I'm also going to say that when we're in school, really what I want to push my students to do is figure out, I do get the questions, what do I do on Tuesday? What do I do on Wednesday? And then my answer is always, what do you want to do on Tuesday? And what do you want to do on Wednesday? And how are you going to hold yourself accountable to making sure that that gets done? And we do a lot of, I'm not a coach and I don't want to be thought of as a coach. There's nothing, it's just not what I do, right? I've tried it. It's not my thing. I want to share what I've learned that doesn't work and what I've learned that does work. And we do so in our scalability calls with our students, which Dr. Gregg is going to come into next month. And we also do so in our onboarding calls. So there's a lot of opportunity for our SOUP students to get the support that they're looking for. In conclusion, any last minute thoughts or anybody listening in want to come in and go live asking Dr. Gregg a question? I'm going to let the awkward silence serve itself.
Okay. I will share this also with that. Again, I just want you to know that this can be done and it can be done very easily. And even when I created Bulletproof, I knew that I needed to make it really, 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 really affordable. And I've had business consultants tell me that I'm an idiot and that if I do that at that price, that I'd be bankrupt within 6 months. And I told them, well, I'm from New York originally. So I told them, I spoke from my heart. And I told them what they could do with their opinion because I said, honestly, I think I know this better than you do. I said, I'm not just trying to get doctors to do something that they hate to do. I'm trying to not only save a profession from ourselves, but I'm trying to really elevate us because what's tragic to me is that we're so great at what we do, but we're still so misunderstood by the rest of the world. And that's on us. That's all our fault with that. And a big part of that is the way we communicate to the world who we are and what we do. And that's our documentation. And I just needed to find a way to make it work better, but to be affordable to everybody. I wanted to make it affordable enough so that even somebody who was just graduated from school could afford it, or somebody who is an associate doctor doesn't, and the owners are not interested. They want to scribble on a travel card. I need to make it affordable for everybody. So I knew for me, this was a long-term kind of a thing. And it was a volume kind of a thing. It had to be affordable. It had to be fast. It has to be exceptional. And I love it. My programmer is a woman. She's in Pittsburgh and she's phenomenal. A lot of programmers, they have a very one-track mind. They only can speak programming language. So I can communicate with her and we understand each other. And this has been a labor of love for her also. I mean, she loves doing this, which is great. So the two of us just get on these
That's
conversations.
cool. Dr. Kim, I see you and I'll be right there. I just want to say, you guys, what Dr. Gregg just did is he shared his vision and his mission with us. You get that, right? You get how clear he is on his vision. And this is what I want to create. And this is why I want to create it. And this is my mission. This is why I do, this is my purpose. So the clearer we get with that stuff, and that stuff is all in Superstar Toolkit, the first part of Soup School. Do not go further until you know what your mission is, until you know what your vision is, until you have your statement of purpose. These things, my mission in Staffless practice is to far exceed your expectations. That's my mission. I'm very clear about it. And if your expectations are X, Y, and Z, then I need to go above and beyond X, Y, and Z. You have to know what your mission is so that you can do what you need to do to get there, if that makes sense. So Dr. Kim, I'm going to ask you to unmute, honey, and I'm just going to go into the gallery view. There we go. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
What's shaking, bacon?
What's shaking? So I understand it's a documenting software that will take the place of, it doesn't do scheduling. It's just documentation. I just want to understand a little bit more about the program, how it works.
Yeah, right now it's documentation only, no scheduling, no billing, no nothing. Although this is funny, I was approached a couple of months ago from another company who emailed me, and it was so funny because the guy's a VP of it, this company. He goes, so we have this program and it's a full EHR with the billing and the scheduling, all that. And to be honest, it's exceptional for that stuff, but it really sucks for the documentation. And that's so true, but he was the first person to actually admit that publicly. So he came to me and he goes, I mean, would you be interested in at least talking to us about maybe integrating? I'm like, well, we could talk about it. And so we're in the process of integrating with that. And that's just an option because I want some doctors don't need billing or scheduling. Maybe they're using something that they like. So I want them to be able to use Bulletproof just by itself if they want to, or if they want to use some full, I mean, this other company does full service billing and everything, if you want, or not. And then I want to be able to integrate with even other companies as well, so the doctors can use that, because that's the missing. So right now, yes, it's just documentation, but we're working on integrating with others.
So that makes sense. So like if I'm using Jane, then I can just pull the notes into, as for instance.
Well, right now we're not integrated with Jane. So like I use a program that's probably the number one in the market, EHR. I won't tell you the name. It rhymes with Pyro Hutch. And I don't use them for documentation. I only use it for billing and scheduling. So what I do is I have that program up on my computer, and then I have Bulletproof on my computer, and then I'll document in Bulletproof. But in the other one, I'll just put it, I got the demographics in there.
You do it in tandem.
Yeah, we'll just do it in tandem
Right.
like that. So that's all I do right now. It takes 2 seconds to be able to do that in that other.
And so the cool thing is that Dr. Gregg's program is super cheap. Like you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. And he gives a killer deal to soup students. So hang tight for more coming on that. Lots of good stuff coming to my students. Any other questions or thoughts, you guys, before we log off? I think that's it. Dr. Gregg, you're kind of a rock star. It's nice having you around Soup School.
Hey, thanks for having me.